We really do live in the golden age of guitar instructional material, with resources like YouTube and then all the slew of magazines that are still being printed, Guitar Techniques being my favorite, to DVD content, to like, you know, subscription only stuff that you can get. I mean, the fact that you're watching this video on my YouTube channel is probably testament to the fact that like any old chump can provide instructional material that people find entertaining and engaging. But I want to talk to you guys about an experience that I know a lot of you who are watching now would have had, and that shaped me as a guitar player, and that is the REH and Hot Licks video collection of like guitar instructional videos, mostly by shredders from the 80s. Let's get into it. So I guess the background for this is probably magazines like Guitar Player and Guitar World and Guitar for the Practicing Musician, if you remember that one. I have a bunch of these old magazines stowed away somewhere, you know, providing like instructional content and interviewing famous guitar players and stuff like that, probably starting in the 70s, and then in the 80s I guess it really kicked off, because I have a bunch of these magazines that have little you know, push out 7-inch vinyl LPs that you could play with instructional lessons with, you know, all the best players at the time. This stuff was so inaccessible. You basically had magazines, and you know, maybe if you were lucky there would be something on TV. But the big innovation, I guess, in the mid-80s was companies like Hot Licks and REH. Starlicks was another one, but I didn't own any of the Starlicks videos. You know, commissioning these amazing guitar players to put together these instructional videos. So I want to talk about 5 VHS tapes that really shaped me as a player and as a guitar instructor and teacher. I'm going to start with the first one that I ever saw. It was Vinnie Moore's Hot Licks videos, Speed, Accuracy and Articulation. And I remember, I remember my dad sort of coming to my room one night and going, "Son, I think it's time you saw this," and he handed me this tape. And I looked at this dude on the cover and I was like, well, this looks cool. This guy's got like a splattery Ibanez guitar and big hair. It must be great. And I put the tape on and I witnessed this. Which was just unlike any type of guitar playing I'd ever experienced in my life. And I was just transfixed by this little guy with the afro who was just destroying the guitar with his 3-note per string licks. He was playing so fast. He was playing so smoothly, and he was playing with an immense amount of taste. I really immediately fell in love with that whole style. And in the video, you know, Vinny, he seems really nervous in the whole thing. You know, he kind of like stutters through a bunch of things, but when he plays, he's so articulate and fluid. And it was a very inspiring tape because he breaks down all these great things that he does so easily. And it actually was the first thing that I think really made me want to practice guitar in a sort of, I wouldn't say regimented way, but in an organized way. You know, all the 3-note per string scales and licks, and I immediately dived off the deep end there and got into, yeah, Mind's Eye, the record that he had out, and all the licks. And you know, I couldn't play any of them at all because I sucked at the time. I was like 15, but it sort of provided this pathway forward for me anyway to get into shred. And I would really recommend that video for anybody who wants to learn how to play fast, fluid lead guitar. Vinnie Moore's Speed, Accuracy and Articulation. Okay, so from that Vinnie Moore experience, obviously a lot of the fast playing, a lot of the really smooth style stuff, it turns out that my dad also had this other video by this amazing fusion legato player who happened to be an Australian called Frank Gambali. And he has a couple of videos from that era. One I think is called Modes No More Mystery. He has another one called Monster Licks and Speed Picking or something like that. But I think his most infamous one is his Chop Builder video, which is kind of designed like an aerobics workout for guitar. If any of you are Aussies who are watching this, who are sort of, you know, I guess were kids anytime from the mid-80s onwards, I'm a 90s kid, you'd be very familiar with aerobics Oz style. And if you're not familiar with aerobics Oz style, this is what I'm talking about.
Down and push. Nice and hard. Come on, hard. I'll leave finger marks.
So the idea of like an aerobic style guitar video, that sounded pretty amazing to like an adolescent boy, right? You know, this is going to be awesome. And then I got this.
Okay, here we go. Section 1, 16 times. Going on to...
That's what I thought. It was really, really cringy the first time I watched it. I was like, man, this is rubbish. Why is anybody going to watch this? This is so cheesy and so corny. But Frank's a really earnest guitar teacher, and when I actually tried playing through, I sat down with the book and I was like, I can do this thing. This is, this is going to be easy. It absolutely kicked my ass. It's like the hardest thing I've ever tried to do. It really is like an aerobics workout. He starts with like the simplest exercises, but then he sort of builds it up into, playing scales and playing modes and playing the melodic minor and the harmonic minor and all their modes. And it actually really pushed me to develop my knowledge of how the fretboard works and how all these kind of things work, and even just basic stuff like being able to pick eighth note triplets consistently for a few minutes and things like that. So even though it's super corny and super dated and super memeable, this should be on like a page on Facebook like everything is terrible. I really like Frank Gambali's Chop Builder VHS. It actually helped my playing so much. So good on you, Frank. You're a good dude. All right, then. The most important event in my life as a guitar player happened. I got Paul Gilbert's REH Intense Rock Sequences and Techniques version 1, and I put it in and I was like, who's this Paul Gilbert guy? He kind of looks like a bit of a dork. I guess he kind of looked like me when I was 15 years, this big tall dude with, gangly arms and long fingers and, a whole head of hair. And I was like, well, this guy kind of looks like me. He looks like a bit of a dork. Let's put it in. And then I witnessed this. Oh my god! That was like the greatest thing I'd ever seen. It's like he just turned on all the cheats on guitar and he just played so aggressively and so fluidly, and it's still one of the best guitar things I've ever seen in my life. Every time I watch it I kind of want to quit. And that basically was my reaction. I just watched the video like, kind of going, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to do any of this. So I turned it off and I got really depressed. But the video was kind of funny, and Paul's a great instructor, and he's got this kind of really, fun way of approaching the guitar. He's just got a good sense of humor. I sort of fell in love with Paul before I fell in love with his playing. Total bromance. But the fact that he could play that way, but also seem genuinely humble and genuinely just kind of funny and cool about everything. And like I said, a little bit of a guitar nerd. He's obviously a massive guitar nerd, as he'll admit himself, I'm sure. Really sort of drew me to this kind of thing. So I put the tape in the next day, and I watched it, and I started playing some stuff. And having come from the Vinnie Moore and Frank Gambali, legato style stuff, and especially the Gambali stuff, he really, encouraged me to try economy pick everything, which probably wasn't a good thing in my development at the time when I was like 15 or 16. Getting into the Gilbert stuff, my life for about 3 months became this. Damn it! Where I realized I just couldn't alternate pick very well, and I couldn't even cross the strings when I was alternate picking. So that first exercise he teaches you in there, the Paul Gilbert lick, as I like to call it, is probably the most useful thing I ever learned in my development as a guitar player, or as a shredder, which is, a term that I know Paul doesn't like, and I don't really like too much either, but whatever, shred 80s shrapnel records, let's call that shred. That's what I wanted to be able to do when I was 16. And that Intense Rock video, I learned every lick on it, and I still put it on every now and then just to remind myself how much I suck compared to like 80s Paul Gilbert. So that is the best instructional thing if you want to learn how to play fast. No one's ever beaten it. Paul in the 80s, you're the man. I love it so much. It's on YouTube, so go and watch it. Learn all the licks if you want to learn how to play fast. It's still my favorite instructional video of all time, and I've got it somewhere on VHS, probably on like a taped VHS or something that I did, a little bit illegally. But anyway, Paul Gilbert, Intense Rock Sequences and Techniques is the bomb. Alright, so getting into Paul, obviously I got into Yngwie at a similar time, and I love Yngwie's playing. He's just the boss. I love, obviously, all the fast stuff that he does, all the neoclassical stuff, but I just love his feel and his touch. And for me, Yngwie has the best vibrato of a rock player ever. It's sort of a toss-up between maybe him and John Sykes for me, but he is just godly. And I got his REH video, you know, this like masterclass series, and I've been hanging out for so long. I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to learn to play like Yngwie. I'm going to devote all this time, you know. I think I just graduated high school, so it was on like summer holidays, and I was like, I've got all this time. I'm going to lock myself in my room for like 10 hours a day and do nothing but, you know, learn all the Yngwie licks. And I put this video on, and it's like the biggest disappointment in my life. Well, I should have known, because, you know, it was Yngwie, and Yngwie does what Yngwie does, but yeah, it was just kind of like this voiceover at the start got me.
This is Yngwie Malmsteen, one of today's most innovative players.
And there's Yngwie running around in, you know, leopard print tights, doing all the things that he does, all this concert footage, and I was like, well, this is cool. I like his fashion sense. I want to try and dress like him. And as he started talking, I became less and less inspired, because it looked like, you know, an interview where they just cut the questions out, where someone was like, hey Yngwie, how do you play fast? I mean, this is the first thing in the video.
This is the way I use the fingering on a diminished arpeggio. It goes as follows.
Which is a pretty disingenuous way to go about like instructing someone, like, oh yeah, here's how I play something super fast. Well, yeah, it's super cool, you know? And I was a little bit off-put by that. But I persevered, and about half an hour into the video, he's got this thing on chords, and I was like, well, I've always wanted to know what Yngwie does in all his solos, because there's always these cool modulations and these cool chord progressions that he does. I want to learn how to just do the chords and play the rhythm guitar stuff. I'll worry about the lead stuff later. And yeah, basically this is what happens.
The chords, B minor, actually B minor with A in the bottom, and then yeah, G. It's nice to play solo over. Try it.
So yeah, he talks about chords for like 10 seconds, he plays like 3 or 4 chords, and then he just starts shredding again. So, and the rest of the video, you know, all this stuff's been like heavily critiqued on YouTube already, but you know, it just comes off as sort of like arrogant and really high-handed, and it's a pretty useless video from an instructional viewpoint. I learnt some cool licks from it, but it really taught me not what to do when you're trying to teach people how to play guitar. And whenever I'm giving a guitar lesson, or whenever I'm putting a video together, my golden rule is don't be like Yngwie in that video. And I love Yngwie, I love his playing, I love everything he does, you know, he's a larger-than-life character, but when it comes to teaching people how to play guitar, he's not the guy. Alright, the last video that I want to talk about, I probably got into maybe when I was 20, so this is like well past the VHS era. I was, you know, looking at stuff on YouTube at this point and looking at stuff on DVD, but somebody lent me their old VHS of Steve Lynch's two-handed tapping. I think it's called the Two-Handed Guitarist. And I put it on and I was immediately like, okay, cool, whatever. I want some light entertainment. I'll put on this thing with this guy with, you know, the big puffy hair and the arms out and the singlets. It's probably where I get the idea for wearing singlets in all my videos, but I just love that this is how he starts the video.
Hi, I'm Steve Lynch, and we're going to have some fun doing some hammer-ons today. Basically,
what's up? We're going to do some hammer-ons, let's do it. And he looks like he's just walked out of a gym in LA, and you know, he's totally got that like LA rock bro thing happening. And my other favorite line is this.
Okay, now this is going to be in the key of E for rock, okay?
Where he kind of sounds like Paul Sanders, like, it's in the key of E for rock, man. Yeah, super cool. So I was sort of giggling at that, but he's a great instructor, and there are some great licks happening in this kind of thing where, you know, the way he just breaks down the pentatonic scale and he connects it with 2 hands, and he sort of takes that approach and scales it up into all sorts of really cool 8-finger tapping stuff. I really liked, and I was like, man, you know, I wanted to sort of make fun of this video and, you know, oh yeah, look at this guy with big hair doing 2-handed tapping stuff. No one likes that anymore, right? You know, what sort of person would, you know, sit around playing fast licks on guitar and filming it with long hair? Not me. But yeah, there's some really cool licks in there that I like, and I stole a lot of his two-handed licks, and that video actually was, you know, pretty inspiring for me, because at that point I'd probably been teaching guitar for a few years, and just the way he sort of breaks it down, and you know, he's very direct and to the point, and he doesn't fluff around like a lot of the other videos that I've mentioned. He just sort of gets in there and it's like, alright, we're going to do hammer-ons, this is what you need to do, and I really try to keep that approach when I'm teaching one-on-one. So, Steve Lynch, you're a legend. I would love to meet you one day and buy you a coffee or something. Much like I would Paul Gilbert, I'd just love to meet that guy and give him a big hug. And Frank Gambali, and Vinnie Moore. And I've actually been lucky enough to speak to Yngwie on the phone. I interviewed him, and he's a way cooler dude than a lot of people give him credit for. But man, that instructional video, dude, what were you doing? But nevertheless, I'd still, you know, like to meet him and give him a fist bump, because I know he doesn't do hands, you know, doesn't do the handshake thing. So whatever, all these videos are worth watching for one reason or another. And you should also listen to Winger as well. Lots of Winger, I recommend that. Red Beach and Kip Winger, Rod Morgenstein, Paul Taylor, they're a great band. They're like the Toto of hair metal. That's the last thing I'll say. Go and check these videos out. And if you've got similar experiences, or you've got favorite REH or Hot Licks videos or Star Licks, whatever it is, that you watched on VHS as a kid or as a developing guitar player, please let me know, because they were sort of the dark ages of guitar instruction, and now we're living in the golden age. There's so much great stuff. Let me know what you had to go through in order to learn all those rad licks. And as always, subscribe to the channel, check out all the cool stuff, and thanks for your support. I'll see you next time. Over to Winger.
Yes, 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 yes.